Hi, and welcome to this video on determining the critical path for your project. So I'm just going to go over the instructions first before we get started. And here we have in Module 3, you created your work breakdown structure for your project. So that is one of the reasons why you might have been asked to resubmit your work breakdown structure, because I wanted to make sure that you were on track or on task for when we got to this point, because if you did not have your work breakdown structure correct, you were going to have a lot of trouble with this area. Okay, so please understand why I may have asked you to resubmit your work breakdown structure, and to make sure you knew the difference between the deliverables of the project and the outcome or the objectives of the project. Okay, so in our instructions for the week, it says to you're going to create this critical path, and you can use three approaches: critical path, critical chain, or network diagram. Okay, so we're just going to do a basic network diagram, which will determine and give you your critical path. Okay, so it says to use any feedback, from your instructor from the previous assignments to make your critical path. And I believe everybody is there and has completed their revisions. Okay, so in this assignment, you do not have to create a PERT, which is a program evaluation and review technique. That's the PERT. Okay, you do not have to complete one of those, because we're going to be doing the network diagram. But you do need to write maybe 3 to 4 paragraphs about the PERT chart. So you want to write, first of all, whenever you write a paper, you should write an introduction as to what is a PERT, okay, the PERT chart. And then it says, what information would you need in addition to the data used to construct the critical path? So if you created the PERT chart, what else do you need for your critical path, okay? And then once you do the 3 or 4 paragraphs on what the PERT chart is, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to create your network diagram. All right, now once you create your network diagram, then you're going to be able to answer the last 3 questions. So you can add that into your Word document right after your PERT information, okay? And then at the end, you're going to do copy and paste a JPEG image into your Word document. And also, if you would please just attach down in the feedback area, just attach that JPEG as well for me, so that I can see it a little bigger, because sometimes when they're put in the Word document, they show up really small and I can't read them as well. And also, with that being said, I'll get to this in a little bit, but I may need you to also attach again your work breakdown structure so that I can see that larger than what's in the Word document, okay? But we'll get into that in just a minute. All right, so now I'm going to go, down here it says, to create the critical path, you may use Shapes in Word or Visio. If some of you have Visio, you're more than welcome to use that. It does have a learning curve and it's very expensive to purchase, so don't even worry about it. You can use Word, you can use your PowerPoint, but I'm going to show you how to use Google Draw, which is it's free. Just use it with your Gmail account. And I found it this first time I've really used it, and I found it very simple to use. So we'll get to that in just a little bit, okay? All right, so the first thing that I'm going to refer you out to is this is my go-to page when I'm working with the critical path. And this is really good for beginners with examples, okay? So I'm not going to go into detail and read all of this, but this is going to be talking about getting started with the critical path and understanding it, and what is a critical path method and what is an actual critical task, okay? So the first example that they have here is, say that you're going to be making something, you're going to make an omelet, okay? So the basic activities or steps to make that omelet is beating 2 eggs, heating the pan with butter or oil, and then put the eggs in and cook for 5 minutes, okay? So those are activities to complete the omelet. So there are other tasks that you could perform to make the omelet, and they include seasoning the eggs with salt and pepper. Maybe you're going to add vegetables and some cheese. Perhaps you want to flip it over on the other side so that the eggs are fully cooked. All right, so however, these activities are in addition to the 3 core steps, but if you don't perform them, you'll still have an omelet. It may not taste very good. It might be bland, but otherwise you'll still have your omelet, okay? But if you forget to beat the eggs or heat the pan or cook the eggs, you won't have anything but a cold pan and 2 eggs, okay? So that's where we're looking at this as to what is the critical tasks to make that omelet, okay? So what are the 3 steps to describe the critical task, okay, to make the omelet? Okay, so when we're making the omelet, we have to beat the eggs, heat the oil, cook for 5 minutes. So notice that those are in blue, and those are identified as critical tasks, okay? So non-critical tasks means that if you miss those steps and you don't do them, you'll still have an omelet, but like they're showing, it's not going to taste, as good as if you add these things. So you have season your salt, add your vegetables, and add the cheese, okay? So also, when you have to do this in the sequence of steps described in the critical path. So let's say it's, you're teaching your child or something like that, and you're going to say, hey, you got to beat the eggs, heat the oil, cook, all right, if they want to make an omelet. These are not critical tasks, okay? So you'll still end up with a project, but it may not taste as good as when you put these other items in it, okay? All right, so let's go down, and then we have the critical path definition here from PMBOK, and the critical path method is a sequence of scheduled activities that determines the duration of the project, okay? So this is why I was so adamant about your deliverables, okay? Because there's a lot of activities that you need to do in order to get that deliverable completed, okay? And the activities are called tasks, okay? So you may hear them referred to as activities or tasks, okay? So they have to be completed in a specific order. If you're building a house, you can't construct the walls and then dig the foundation. You have to do it in sequence. So it is important to understand that the critical path method describes the longest sequence of tasks in the project. That is, at any time you have multiple task sequences, the critical path method would describe the sequence that takes the most time. For example, here, if you're building a house, you have several tasks. Okay, so notice how they put this together. So your start is building the house, your house is the finish. So you're going to dig the foundation in how many days, build the walls, how many days, build the roof, how many days. Now, the house will still be built if you don't install faucets or fixtures or install the carpeting, okay? Your house will still get completed if you don't do those 3 tasks, okay? But you must do the critical path task, which is in blue, in order to build the house. So now we come down here and we say each task takes a different amount of time and resources. It takes more time to build the walls and lay the roof than to install the faucets and fixtures, okay? So if you had to figure this out, you would look at the sequence that takes the most amount of time. So here we go, and we're looking at this here, building the house, and then of course we have our install items here, and it's 2 days, 4 days, 3 days, so the total is 9 days. But if we come down here on the critical path, which has to be done, we have 10 days, 20 days, and 10 days, so the total time is 40 days, okay? So with that being said, if you at least submit this very basic critical path method for your project, it will be acceptable, okay? But I'm going to move forward and show you a little bit more of how to complete a critical path. We're not going to get into a whole lot of detail since it's just, the beginning. You're just learning this. For those of you that may be a little bit more advanced and have had a little bit more experience working with critical paths, maybe in other projects, you can go ahead and move forward and complete it in a little bit more detail. Okay, so if we go on down here, we look at the critical path algorithm, okay? And one of the things that you need to do is create this little table, and you can create, it's easy to create in Excel, or you can, do a Word table, if you want. But this is what you need to complete. So then you can go ahead and work on your critical path diagram, okay? So what I have done here is I created my table here in Excel, okay? Now my project, let me pull over my work breakdown structure so I can show you. So this is my work breakdown structure, and this is, I totally completed it from the last sample that I showed you. But what I did is I went in here and completed everything out, okay? I did find that I changed my e-learning cybersecurity. I added the mandatory notification to all employees and all those tasks underneath it to the go live area. I found that worked a little bit better. So I have my deliverables. Remember, our level 2s are our deliverables, okay? So what I did is I just took each one of those and I identified them here. So if I wanted to go back, I can see that this is task IDE and it takes 1 month to complete. I went ahead and populated those in there as well. Okay, so I went in here. Now, mine was very simple. It was sequential, where each thing had to be completed before the next one could start. Okay, so if we look here, creating my cybersecurity team, and if I come back and look at my work breakdown structure, and we look at all the tasks in here, okay, those are all the tasks that have to be completed for the deliverable number 1. All right, so I estimated that as about 7 days for completion. So you can see so forth and so on here, okay? And so here we have all my predecessors. So in other words, before I can start B, A needs to be complete. Before I can start C, B needs to be complete, and so forth and so on, okay? Now down here I did a modified one to show you something that might not be so straightforward and sequential, okay? So we'll come to that later. Now let me pull this out of the way. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to pull over, before we go any further, I'm going to pull over the Google Draw and show you. So I just went to googledraw.com and I logged into my account, and then it came up here. And so what you can do in here is you can go ahead and start creating your little boxes, okay? And let me just show you a minute. I kind of skipped that part, but you're kind of going to end up looking with a little bit of a diagram like this. Mine looks a little bit different, but it was easier to create this for, let me bring it over and I'm going to show you. See, I'll come back to this in a minute, but see, I just did a sequential chart and I start and finish, and my critical path, every one of my tasks is on the critical path for my project, okay? And I'm going to finish in 132 days, okay? I'm going to show you a little bit of a modification of that in a minute, but first let me just show you quick a little bit about the Google Draw. And so you can go in here and you, if you wanted to try to make it landscape or a little bit bigger, which you're probably going to need, you just come down here to page setup, and then I did custom, and I did it like 11 by 8.5 to try to get it a little bit wider for me, okay? And then you just come up here and you insert shapes, and I just used a little square drew one little square, and then I kind of figured out how many tasks I had, and all I did was copy and paste and copy and paste and so forth and so on. You guys can see how that's working. Then you get the little arrow, the little crosshairs, and you can drag these into different places. Okay, so that's what you can do, and just use the Google Draw. Like I said, it seemed to be very intuitive and and user friendly. And then you look, you can draw your arrows when we get ready to do the connectors, and then you can click on them and you can change the colors of the arrows. Okay, so let me come back to that here. Let me get rid of this one and let me pull over my chart here. Okay, so mine, like I said, was very simple. It was sequential. Now some of yours are not going to be that easy, so I'm going to show you a modified version of my cybersecurity. Okay, and critical path is the longest sequence of tasks that must be completed to finish a project. All right, so what I did is I went, because I know some of yours are not going to be sequential, so I wanted to do another example. So I changed this up a little bit, and I did, you know, that A and B must be complete, you know, must be worked on first, 7 and 5 days. And then I just kind of, this might not make too much sense, but I was just trying to have a little bit of a different look here for some of yours. So the top 3 vendor choices, well, of course, A and B must be created in order for me to do 3. Okay, they must have my team created, then they must go out and look at different cybersecurity training vendors. Okay, so then I put, I changed the day here, the number of days for the go live, I mean the implementation from 25 instead of 30, just so I can show you some different things here. So then C would have to be completed before I do D, and then D has to be completed, of course, before we can implement. And so anyway, I just made it here where we have a little bit of more predecessors here than just sequential. Okay, so now that I have my chart and table done, like I said, you need to do this first, because then it makes it simpler when you do your drawing. Okay, so let me put these side by side here. All right, and let me get my other drawing. So this was the basic drawing. So now let me pull up my drawing here, and this is where you are probably going to be looking at this and saying, what? But let me try to get these a little bit side by side, so without cutting off my information. Well, it's a little bit hard to get these side by side, but anyway, you can kind of see here my my predecessors and my tasks. So when I put that over here, let me see if I can do this. All right, so I think I've got this a little bit so that you can kind of see both at the same time. So what I did was when I started, I created, and this is why it's good to go in Google Draw, or if you want to write it on paper first before you even put it in Google Draw. So I always have, you know, my start. Okay, now I abbreviated these. You can go ahead and abbreviate, but if you do abbreviate, I do need you to attach your work breakdown structure image as well, so that I can go back and look at them, or if you want, if you could put both in your Word document, just so that I can see them. So, you know, especially if you abbreviated them like I did here. But for time's sake, I just abbreviated them. So the creation of my team was 7 days. Okay, that's going to be A. And then my researching for the cybersecurity resources is 5 days, so I put it down here as B. Okay, and then I had C, the top 3 vendors. The final selection is D. Implementation is E. And then F is the, let's see, what is F? The e-learning, cybersecurity, implement, no, wait, what is that? Training, okay. And then G is the data collection, and then finish, okay. All right, so let me scoot this out of the way and let me explain to you what I did here. All right, so I have 4 paths here, and I have them identified up here, and I put them in different colors, okay? So you just can just use your text colors up here, and you change your text color from right there, okay? All right, so what my paths are here is, of course, the start. All right, so if we follow the pink one, I have my path is A needs to be done, then I go to C, 14 days, then I come over here to D, then I go to E, and then I go to G, and then I finish out. Okay, so I calculated that as 90 days for that path. Then my next path is the dark blue. So we have the start from A, then I go to C, then I go to D, then we go to F, then G, and finish out. So that one ended up as 95 days. So then I look at my next path, okay, and I start, and then I go to B, and then we go to C, and then D, and then I have to do E, then we go to G and finish out. That's the green. And then the last path was my red, okay, so I started with B, and I went to C, and then we went over to D, okay, so everybody is, we're always going to C and D here, okay. I'm never going to B and A though. Those are 2 separate tasks that are on different paths, okay. So in other words, A can be going on possibly sometimes while B is going on. All right, so now if I come over here, let's see, I was on the red, so we come to D, and then I go down to F, and I go to G and finish out. So now that I've calculated all of these paths, I look to see which one is the longest path. So I'm looking here, and I see that the blue, the dark blue, is the critical path, because that's the 95 days. And so then I just mark it in here, 95 days. So that is the longest path to complete all the tasks. Okay, so when we get in here, the 90 days up here in the pink path, notice B is not included. Okay, B is only included in the green and the red. Okay, so that's why once we plot this out, we go back and we look at our paths. A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, F, G, etc. Okay, and then we just count it up, add it up, and I came out with 95 days is my critical path. Okay, so that's all you need to do here is you plot this out. And so if you're getting a little bit confused, then just go ahead and use the basic one with the building of the house. Okay, so just if you're getting a little bit confused, because this can really get involved, just at least make sure you have this little graphic here. All right, and put your critical task in a color, and then the non-critical task here in a color, and then make sure you put in here how many days is your critical path. Okay, now my real project, I mean everything, everything, I can't skip any steps in my real project here. They all build on each other. Okay, now your projects, you might be able to identify which is not the most critical, or these things, the house can still be built without these things done. Okay, now if you're feeling a little bit more comfortable, then go ahead and use your Google Draw and come up with this version here, and then just put your different paths out there. Just watch how your arrows are going, and you follow this to see how your paths are going. Okay, So you've got your A and B is your predecessor here to C, okay? So see, you got A here and B and then C. So your predecessors is A and B, okay? And then when you get down here, the predecessor to D is C. So there it is. There's your predecessor, C to D, okay? Now, the last thing that I'm going to show you here is I want to show you how things can get more involved, okay? So let me bring this over, and we're not going to even worry about this right now, but in general, you can get pretty involved here. And I'm going to put this PowerPoint too. I'm going to put everything, the video and all my samples, I'm going to put in a Google Drive folder so that you have access to all of these things while you're working on your critical path, okay? So let me get my screen here. Trying to change my monitor here. I have 3 monitors, so it doesn't like to go to the right monitor. All right, so there we go. I think you can see this now. All right, so this here is a more involved type of project. Here's our activities, and then here we have, A must be for D. Okay, so before you could do D, you must complete A. So if we go look over here, here's D, and notice A is right before it. Okay, this is going to be on the next slide. But then E, we have to have C. So here's E down here. Okay, and then, oh wait, I'm sorry, here's E. And then we look down here and here's C. Okay, because then we go from C to E. All right, and then you have your F. So you've got your B is before your F. So here's your B up here, and then notice your F. So B goes before F. Notice your arrows. See how the arrows are going? A to D, B to F. Okay, I just went back. Okay, so anyway, these are, make sure you have your table because it really helps to have your table. So then when we get in here, they start plotting it with, your different tasks. So let me go back and notice, see, you have ABC, okay? Oh, sorry, very touchy. So you got ABC with no immediate predecessor. So you're going to have those 3 ABC. You're going to have your start, and then here's your ABC, okay? Then you have to start looking at the what comes before. So that's when we look at D, we say, well, what comes before D is A. So we know D needs to be on that track there. Okay, and then the same thing with E. We know that E is on C. Okay, so we put C here and E, even though it's going up, you kind of want to try to keep these letters in some kind of order. C, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so then we come down here to F, and we see the predecessor is B. So here's our B, and we just come down to F. Okay, so that's how you go through this. All right, and then this is we make sure we put our duration, days, also in here, okay? And then this can get really involved, and we're not doing that for this class. You can do this when you get into more advanced classes. But then you have what's called an early start and an early finish, late start, late finish. In other words, what it means is the earliest the task can start, where you can still get it completed in the number of days, okay? Or the latest the task can start to get completed in so many days, okay? So if we go forward, you can see he's starting to put these little boxes in here, but let me go forward a little more. So here we have the start is 0 and 0, and then our A is the earliest we can start is 0, day 0 of the project, and it takes 30 days. So that is our earliest start is day 0 and our earliest finish is day 30 because it takes 30 days for us to complete this task. Okay, so it probably went over some of this in the, well, I know it went over some of this in the textbook about your early start, early finish. We're not going to worry about that for this project, but I just wanted you to know. And some of you, if you've already had experience doing it, that's fine. You can go ahead and put in your um, early start, early finish, late start, late finish. Okay, so now if we go forward, let's see, he's just adding each one of these in here. Okay, and so 54 days is our critical path. Okay, all right, so let's go forward, and then you have to go back in and then you do your late start and your late finish dates. Okay, so let me just populate those real quick for you. All right, still at 54 days. All right. Now, this here is where they start adding in Slack, free Slack or total Slack. What that means is, like for task number 1, so if we look back at this, the earliest start is day 0, day of project opening, to 30 days. The latest start that we can start is day 1 to be finished by day 31. Okay, so we can dally a day here, maybe start 1 day late. Okay, but when you see these here, there's 0 days of flow. That means these tasks have got to start on day 46 and has to finish on day 54. Okay, there's no room for slack. And then what happens is the tasks that are 0 days end up being on the critical path. Okay, so you'll see that as we go forward. So look at this, K is on the critical path, but notice everything with no slack is on the critical path, which is the orange. Okay, because there's no room for allowing any of that slack when you're doing your project. Okay, so like for example, this one here, we got 1 little day of wiggle room too. So so of course A has to complete before D starts in this case. Okay, so D can start on day 30 is the earliest day it could start, and then the earliest time that it could finish is day 33, which is adding that 3 days in there. Okay, but then if this guy over here, if A doesn't start till day 1 and finishes 31, this guy can't start until 31, right? Okay, so his latest start date could be 31 and his latest finish date is 34 because you add the 3 days in there. Okay, so that's how that works. You don't have to worry about doing it. And then this PowerPoint has a little exercise for you if you want to go ahead, and I'll have this PowerPoint in the resources for all of these items so that this way you can see everything if you want to work on some exercises and doing some more critical path exercises. I'll leave that one in there, okay? But anyway, I want to go ahead and finish this out so that it's not such a long video. But if, like I said, if you, the first thing you need to do is do your table, okay? Because once you do your table, it's going to be a little bit simpler to go ahead and do your drawing, all right? So if you are feeling overwhelmed, just at least try to come up with this type of a diagram for me. And that Workamajig website, I will be putting the link in the announcement area so that you have this to work from. So at least if you can get me this, that will be acceptable, okay? So it will be at the satisfactory level, okay? But for the exemplary level, you do need to try and get to this level here. And you can use the Google Draw. You don't have to use the Google Draw. I just felt that it was a lot easier. And I was working with a colleague, and I just went up here and shared this to him to his email address, and we were both working in here at the same time. We were testing this Google Draw out, and it actually worked really good. But anyway, so if you have any questions or concerns or anything, please feel free to email me. I hope this will help you with plotting your critical path. Um, Try not to get too involved. And for those of you that had, and I know some of you did, you had really big work breakdown structures, okay? So if you want to condense your work breakdown structures down some, because this is getting overwhelming, please go ahead and do so, but I need the modified work breakdown structure, okay? So for example, I actually took one of my deliverables out of here compared to my project proposal. This is not good to do when you're doing a real project, but for the basis of education and for this assignment, you can, do that. And also for time's sake, I know some of you had really large work breakdown structures, which is great because that's what you really need in the real world. But then when you're plotting out this critical path, you might get really overwhelmed, okay? So just make sure, everybody should, make sure you do your PERT. You need to tell in the paper what a PERT is and answer those questions about the PERT, and then do your network diagram, copy and paste that JPEG into your Word document, and then go ahead and answer the questions about what you're seeing on your critical path. Answer those questions. Let me bring the assignment back up so that we can go over those. Give me just a second. Sorry, I had a lot of windows open. So yeah, so just make sure that you answer these. What issues are evident in your critical path? So once you've plotted that critical path, what issues are you seeing? Okay, are you thinking that the project is going to maybe be running over the time that you had predicted in the beginning? What steps can you take to avoid failure along your critical path, and what information would a PERT chart provide you to help make decisions about your project? Okay, so just write 3 to 4 paragraphs about the PERT, and then do your critical path, and then answer those last 3 questions. Okay, so I know this got kind of long, but I felt I needed to really explain to you in detail about this. So once again, any concerns, issues that you might have with this, please feel free to email me, and I hope that this has helped you with your plotting your critical path of your project. Thank you.